Thank you so much for staying here on the JoyNews channel. President Akufo-Addo there addressing the media before they get the opportunity to ask him the questions they've hoped to ask. Since we started the year, you would know, or you may be aware, that we met the president once this year, and last year there was another encounter. And so there are a lot of questions bothering on so many sectors of the economy. The president has touched on so many things, from education to agriculture, and he's spoken about the current economic state and all. But I'm here in the studio with my colleague Raymond Akwa, and we'll be bringing you a lot more analysis on whatever's going to happen today. Raymond, anything new from what the president said? Anything new you caught?
So at the risk of sounding dumping it, these are things that's been said consistently. Maize production, we've heard about the basics of the economy. I am always insistent that you put the exchange rate in there, which has been problematic. We also put in the other elements of, in fact, government makes consistent reference to gross international reserves. I am interested in knowing what the net international reserves is, which shows the exact position of your international reserves. Many of these he didn't mention in the, I don't know, but he has the right to choose which of the figures he would want to put out there.
Exactly.
There was also, I mean, and basically started from the point of the trains and what has been done in that particular area. One thing that caught my attention is that we did say we had done an MOU with a grouping from South Africa for Sky Trains. Whilst that sounded like a bold decision by government, it was not on the list of things the president mentioned. Again, he made so many developments that happened. The president consistently have shied away from the over 1 million jobs created in this particular economy, which has been touted by the employment minister. But jobs was something that I would have been interested in what he said to those figures. Indeed, if there's increase or decrease, or it still stands by some of the figures that have been put out there. So these are basically the loopholes I've seen so far in what he has said. Of course, they will ask him the questions to probably fill in those loopholes. But
yes,
it is what I'm seeing as the. It is, and if I were to present, I will select the areas I'm doing well to.
Okay, Raymond, we'll have to cross over back to the Jubilee House. The questions from journalists have started.
Thank you. Mr. President, you've given us a very glossy picture of the economy. You said the IMF head was here recently, but my knowledge of the IMF, it's like the owners of football clubs in Europe. The moment they give you the vote of confidence, the next moment you're out. I want to know, how this glossy picture is going to impact on the Ghanaian, because there appears to be a disconnect. We have very good figures in the books, but ordinary Ghanaians are going to Christmas, most of them complaining that there's nothing in their pocket. But as former president of the Sports Writers Association, I just want to rub this in. We have one district, one factory. What about one district, one sports stadium? Thank you.
Mr. President, I bring you greetings from the Eastern region. In government quest to mobilize more revenue, how do you ensure that you don't overburden the importers through high import duties, which will trickle down to the ordinary Ghanaian consumer? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Kuje Champong. I report for TV Africa. I would want you to give me your assessment performance of your MPs with respect to the Fisheries Ministry. Thank you.
Afi, Mr. President. I want to talk about population that will feed into the economy. So you have recently said...
Sorry, say it again. You want to do what?
Talk about population management that
population
into
management.
The economy. You have recently said that you want us to be like Japan and the Asian tigers. And if we compare their population and ours, if you look at the numbers in terms of children between or below the ages of 15, in Ghana, we are talking about 40% of our population. And out of this, we are aware that this is not the force within we can derive so much in terms of labor. So I want to ask, what exactly are you going to do? What radical measures you're going to put in place to make sure that as we open our markets, the Nissans, the Volkswagens, as they come in, we have quality human capital that can turn our fortunes around? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mr. President, in the past 2 years, all the economic indicators have been pointing towards the right direction, and you said it yourself. But as my senior colleague said, people still don't feel it in their pocket. What is the missing link? And in the next 2 years, what are we going to see? Thank you.
So, Marine Drive. Marine Drive is a huge development that is being envisaged. And since the time of the sword cutting, efforts have been made to secure the basic agreements that will be able to finance the project. Fortunately for us, the anchor tenant of the Marine Drive project has now been finally established. The exercise of drawing the plans and the architect surveys, all of that is still ongoing. And the time frame within which the completion of the project is being contemplated is something in the area of 3 years. But the process has begun. And I believe that the Ministry of Culture, Arts and Tourism, who is the lead governmental figure on it, is very much in the middle of monitoring the development and the progress. But developments of that nature are not things that happen overnight. It's a huge, even if you see even the artist's impression of the final thing, it's a major reconstruction of Accra that is going to take place on that side. It'll happen, fortunately, because, once again, this famous word that some people, I think, find irksome. The fundamentals of our economy are the ones that will attract investors. They know that your economy is stable. They bring their money in today. When they're taking their money out in 5 years, 6, 7 years, is more or less the same amount of money. That will encourage them to put it in. They bring their money in today, and they can see that within a year or two, that money is going to diminish and shrink because you don't have any discipline in the way in which you run an economy. They won't bring the money in the first place. So we shouldn't snare at this fundamentals of the economy. All the economies, the Asian economies, that have been the lead in the 20th century for transforming themselves from underdevelopment to development. That was the key factor that they never forgot, the need for stability in their economy, the need for discipline over there. You look at the history of Japan, look at the history of Korea, all of them. They were very, and they still are up till today, extremely strict about insisting on discipline in the management of their public finances. Because when that goes to pieces, like we have seen, what rushed us to the IMF? What took us to the IMF in 2015? A complete breakdown in the management of our public finances. We can't afford those again. So it is not just language. It is about the development of our economy. And I want that to be very clear. I've been accused of putting a glossy picture. I don't think giving the facts about what's happening in your economy is necessarily putting a glossy picture. I don't accept that description of the word at all. If the figures are wrong, tell me. Yes, because that's what you have to do. Say, no, but these things that you're saying is not true. You don't have such percent this, you don't have such percent that, you don't have such percent that. The mere fact, because that is the way you engage when you're talking about economic argument. The figures I'm putting out are coated, they're sugar-coated, they're not true. But not that they're glossy. I don't paint it any glossy. I have too much respect for the people of Ghana to put glossy pictures before them. I paint for them the truth. I said I recognize the salaries and wages in our country are still too low. I said so openly. And that should tell you that I'm not talking glossy, I'm talking reality. Today, the household budget, the average household budget, is facing a declining rate of inflation. Inflation is the biggest enemy of poor people. The inflation rate in Ghana is going down all the time. We're lucky at this period too. Fuel prices are going down. Electricity prices have gone down significantly. All of these key indices, food prices, in the budget of the average household, it's gone down significantly. People are no longer paying secondary school fees for their children. All of these are the things that are also taking place in this cry of there's no money in people's pockets. I think if most people stood back and saw their pockets, they would see that there's far more money in their pockets now than there has been for a very long time. The disconnect, clearly, putting the economy on a strong footing, attracting the investments, and then waiting for that to impact on the standard of living and on income levels, there is always a lag. There's no economy in the world which sees that transition to be immediate. There's always a lag between the measures that are put in place to strengthen the economy and the translation of those measures into appreciable increases in wage levels and income levels. I'm very confident that if we hold firm, that translation in Ghana will occur. I don't think that there's a disconnect that is inexplicable. It's a disconnect that is very, very normal. But it will happen. I have no doubt in my mind about it. Already, as I say, I'm sure some of you, the figures that I put out, when you look at it, you must be pinching yourself a little. Those of you who have young children, you're not paying school fees anymore. Or the monies are being spent on other things. I hope not. That the people in the house are still the most important people, not people outside. I don't know, some people may want to. Is that it? Yeah. No, so, as I say, these are facts. They are not imagination on my part. Fuel prices, inflation, electricity prices, school fees, all of these indices we are giving more and more relief to the people of Ghana in the measures that we're taking. And I'm very, very confident that very soon the translation of that will happen. The high import duties. There's a major debate going on inside our government right now about what attitude we're going to take on the issue of duties. There's a strong lobby that is saying that we should go, for instance, in the level of Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, almost no import duties. Everything comes in, but you generate a lot of business. That argument is being made. The traditional argument that is also being made that we maintain the duty system. I'm hoping that very, very soon, the final result of that debate inside the government will be known to the Ghanaian people and where we go. But yes, I think that a high import duty system is a disincentive to economic activities, a disincentive to the purchasing power of ordinary people, and that there's therefore a clear need for every government to be very sensitive to it. I'm very sensitive to it. And as I say, a time is going to come very soon when the result of this debate inside the government will be announced. The performance of the Fisheries Minister. I think that was not kind to the lady. Was not kind to the lady. I think she's been doing a yeoman's job. It's a difficult area. I think fishermen, together with lawyers, are some of the most conservative people in the world. And getting them to change their attitudes and their habits is not easy. And we have somebody who's extremely passionate about wanting to preserve the marine stocks of our country and at the same time buy into this whole idea of clean fish, decent fish, wholesome fish, rejecting dirty fish and all of that. So the impression is given that she's at loggerheads with the fishing people, but there are many, many in that community And one of the advantages of this ability to leave these premises and go out to meet people is that I hear. And there are many, many different views being expressed in the fishing community. But I'm satisfied about her enthusiasm, her courage, and her determination. Because those are important qualities if you want to bring about any serious reform. If you're going along with and playing to the gallery all the time to be popular, you never get anything done. But if you have the courage of your convictions, you know what it is that you want to see. And I think all of us have an interest in making sure that the marine resources of our country are preserved, not just for us, but for the generation of people that are following us. I think that really many of you should admire Our Lady. Population management. Yes, I'm a very strong admirer of the Japanese model. But we are at different stages of our development, and as it were, at different points in time. The Japanese population is declining. There are 120 million today. They're anticipating that by 2050 there will be 80 million. And going further, of course, people are not having children in Japan. It's virtually zero. I think it's something like 0.7 per woman. That's where they are. But we are 3%. In 60 years, when I was a boy growing up, at the time of independence, we were 6 million in Ghana. Accra, here, believe it or not, was a city of 250,000 people. Today is 6 million, 60 years later. And we are 30 million, 5 times. So that's a very important variable in the equation. But at the same time, the process of modernization, making sure that our women are going to school, the young girls go to school, that's a key factor. More important factor in controlling population growth than probably any other. The fact that young girls are not having children at the age of 15, but are in school at the age of 15, and maintain in school until 18 at the very least, you're postponing the whole process of childbearing. So that's the key factor. And we are all in agreement that we want to make sure that all our people, men and women, and especially these Ghanaian girls who are so bright, every time they compete with us, they're beating us hollow. You hear all the results that go through the schools and the universities and everything. We want as many of them inside the mix as possible. It'll be, over a period of time, an important contribution to slowing down the population in our country. There are other measures that we have to contemplate, because clearly a runaway situation on the continent, and to that extent, we're not particularly different from what the rest is happening on the continent. It is being proposed that by 2050 we'll be 2 billion people. Will be 1 in 4 people in the world will be African. That's how huge the demographic profile of our continent is going to be. So the policies that we make have to take into account. One of the reasons why I'm desperate for this economic takeoff from Ghana is that the young people, our population, the median age is 19 years, 5 months. Can you imagine? That's the median age of the 30 million people of Ghana. It's 19 years, 5 months. We've got to create opportunities for this young population to be able to make it and survive, so that they can abandon all of this desperate search for green pastures ahead. And that requires that we manage this economy in a strong and dynamic way. Grow it quickly, expand it, let us create jobs. And that will be the contribution that we can make to our population issue. As you modernize, people are at work, people are in school, it forces its own dynamic on birth population growth. Everybody knows that when I hear that it's the period of the doomsday, there are a lot of children. Because at the end of the day and night, we're all twiddling our thumbs, not having too much to do. So the obvious things is what then comes up into play. But if we are in gainful employment and all of us are working hard, I think that we will find a way of bringing down the population. I think the money in their pocket thing, I've answered it. It was just the first question. So.
Thank you, sir. We will move to the next set of questions.
Oh, one district, one stadium. Hey. We're even having a problem with one per region. I don't want to make a promise. I think it's a good idea. I certainly think it's a good idea. One stadium, one modern stadium per region, I think is a very good idea. Yeah. Well, all right.
Mr. President, thank you. We will move through the next set of about 6 questions. The next is health. And then, so we'll do health, education, infrastructure, sports, and creative arts. I have Mr. Bismarck Brown for health. He's registered for health. Please step up to the microphone.
But, Minister, I have all of these very able people here. At some stage, I'll call upon them also to help me out. I hope nobody will object to that.
Very well, sir.
Okay.
I have Mr. Kwejoe Champon from TV Africa. He has a question in agriculture.
In health or agriculture?
There's a question in health here. There's another question in agriculture. So, Mr. Kwejoe Champon of TV Africa, please join us. Let's rise up to the microphones very quickly. We have Kwame Adinkre, Busia FM, has got a question on infrastructure. So please rise up to the microphones and let's take your questions. Yes, please proceed.
Merry Christmas, Mr. President.
Thank you. The same to you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, on the 19th of April 2015, a delegation from the Ministry of Health traveled to Michigan in the United States. And they were led by the Director of Policy, Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation of the Ministry, Dr. Afisa Zakaria. On their return, Dr. Zakaria filed this report I have in my hand. The main purpose of this trip was to visit some facilities in Michigan and also raise and solicit support for Ghana or for Ghana's preparedness and response to Ebola. They were hoping to galvanize support to build 10 regional infectious disease centers, rebuild a central medical stores facility in Tema, replenishment of medical supplies for the distribution center that was lost to the fire disaster, distribution of medical supplies, and also familiarize themselves with some proposals and some facilities there. In fact, Dr. Zakaria secured the buy-in of the Michigan Aerospace Manufacturers Association, and they agreed in principle to build 10 regional infectious disease centers, build and replenish a central medical store for the Ministry of Health, provide 2 ambulances for each of the 10 hospitals, and 2 helicopters. Mr. President, in that report, Dr. Zakaria also indicated that the Michigan Aerospace, I'm sorry, if I don't build this background, my question will be very meaningless. Mr. President, my question is this. You spoke about medical drones doing supplies. I am very much aware that on the 24th of August 2017, a group from the Michigan Aerospace Manufacturers Association met with you. I want to understand the status of this proposal and also what is the difference between the current drone agreement we have from this very one. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Adinkra, and then Mr. Otieje, you have a question listed for sports. Please step up very quickly, sir.
That's right. Good evening, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to find out progress on the construction of a national theater for Ashanti region, for that matter, Kumasi. as we're about to celebrate Christmas, sometimes we don't have a befitting area to events, organizing events. So I want to know a progress report on your commitment to build a befitting national theater in Kumasi.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question relates to the number 12 video that brought Ghana football to a standstill. I'm just wondering your core lessons from that episode and how you think going forward the relationship between the Football Association and government should be, because if there was anything from that episode, it was just sometimes the nature of it and how it affects everybody. So what for you were the core lessons from it, and how you intend to build a relationship between the next Football Association when elections are held and government? Thank you.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
I have a major problem and liability in answering the first question. I'm not familiar with the document that you read out to me. Its contents, where's the yes, I'm not familiar with its contents. This is the first time I'm hearing it. I didn't know that such a large policy had been evolved in the past government. I have no idea about any of the things that you're saying. And these people, when they came to see me, did not refer to that at all. Yeah, so it's difficult for me to even evaluate in terms of what is being done now and what you have in your hand. No problem, no problem. All right. But is it still alive? Is the whole project still alive? I wouldn't know whether it has been brought to me. Is he here? Is he here? Azuma, only baby, only baby. Only baby. You're lucky. The minister knows something about what you're saying.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually haven't seen that extensive document in the ministry yet, but I know about the group, a number of Ghanaians. They engaged me. I booked an appointment with His Excellency, the President. The people they said were coming included Bill Gates and the Managing Director of Aerospace. When they came, there were about 7 Ghanaians and 1 American, who was neither the MD for aerospace nor Bill Gates. I got a bit disillusioned. When I went back, they also went away. Then they sent messages that they wanted to come to do sword cutting. And I told them that if they haven't demonstrated evidence of source of funding, I cannot lead them to deceive the people of this country. So they fizzled out, and I haven't heard from them again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, sometimes, you have to be careful what you ask for. Anyway, some information has been given to you. Not at all. Not at all. All right. The progress of the National Theatre in Kumasi. Unfortunately, Catherine Afiku is not here for me to find, but we'll get you an answer. We'll get you an answer. I think that the fundamental arrangement that there is in the administration of football, which FIFA has implemented and adhered to all these years, is still the right one, which is that essentially football should be the responsibility of football people, and that as much as possible, governments should keep out of the administration of football. I don't think has implemented and adhered to all these years is still the right one, which is that essentially football should be the responsibility of football people. And that as much as possible, governments should keep out of the administration of football. I don't think that too many people would quarrel with that fundamental position. But of criminal conduct, like any activity, it's not possible for government to turn a blind eye to those things on the basis that football, this is about football. Because in that principle, you can do that compartmentalization on all aspects of the society's activities. That, oh, this is such and such a thing, so therefore, no. If the law, the maintenance of law and order, the respect for our laws, it's in the compliance with, the enforcement of them, that is squarely the responsibility of government. And that responsibility is not in any way diminished because it is in a particular area which is supposed to be a preserve of a particular group of people or a particular... And that is not a lesson that this matter taught me. This is a lesson, this is a matter that I've always understood. What I'm hoping for out of what has happened is that through this normalization committee, the government and FIFA worked out together to establish a new beginning in Ghanaian football administration is going to be started, because the process is there for them to make a new constitution and to begin at the beginning and put in a structure that hopefully will prevent the kind of things that we have seen in the past. That is my hope, and I think it should be the hope of all of us, that this game that we all adore. There's nobody in this country who loves football more than me. I'll say that as a matter of record. There's nobody in Ghana who loves football more than me. Anyone who knows me tells me I'm a fanatic. So, but what the picture that was brought to us was not a picture that was encouraging. Something had to be done about it. And it had to be done under the responsibility of government for the maintenance of law and order in our country. And I think that remains constant. As I say, I'm hoping the people who have been put on this normalization committee, certainly from what I know of all of them, these are very upright, straightforward, intelligent, capable Ghanaians. I think that they're going to lead the process of a more sane football administration, making rules that will be more transparent in the way things are done, and trying to balance the various interests that there are in football, the interests of we, the spectators and audience, the interests of those who put money in football, the interests of the administrators, the interests of the players, the clubs, it's a whole bundle of things. We have to be able to find a way of linking them together. I'm hoping that it has happened elsewhere. We're watching on television other leagues operating. Every now and then, even they give rise to scandals. When those scandals occur, they're dealt with. FIFA itself. Only a few years ago, we had the issues of Blatter, the others who ran FIFA, and were chastised and sanctioned by courts of law. So the basic premise on which FIFA runs world football, I don't quarrel with it. But at the same time, I think that this residual authority in the state to make sure that everybody in it complies with its rules, its regulations, its culture of due process must continue to be upheld.
Mr. President, I want to invite Mr. Wilberforce Sassari, who has a question on energy. On security, Abdul Hanan from Marhaba FM has a question. Mr. Gordon Asarbidi from the New Crusading Guide has a question on education. Mr. Donald Dapate has a question on politics and governance. Mr. Charles Techibwedu has a question on international relations.
Can we stop there? Can we just stop there? That would be the 7 o'clock, especially Charles Ketchibodi, who's my good friend. Let's stop with Charles Tetchibodi.
Please step up to the microphone. Please step up to the microphone.
Let's stop with Charles Tetchibodi. It'll be...
Let's step up to the microphone, gentlemen.
Right. Good evening, Mr. President. My question is, in 2015, the Central Medical Stores in Tema was raised down by fire. Ghana lost over $8 million worth of medicine. National Security had an investigation and officials were indicted. Last they were told the investigation is ongoing. What is the current status of that investigation, Mr. President?
Really?
Yeah.
Investigation into the terrorist, it's still outstanding?
Yes, please. Yes, Mr. President, there was a report on it from National Security.
Into the fire?
Yes, please.
What was the suspicion, that it was arson?
It was an arson, yes.
It was arson,
yes.
Deliberately
It was
done.
concluded that it was an arson, and the officials were named.
But they have not been convicted?
No, please.
So
prosecution hasn't started.
So it is alleged, not concluded?
Concluded by National Security.
But
not
alleged?
Yes.
Even them, it can only be an allegation.
I defer to you.
Yeah, but I don't know whether, Mr. Minister, you know about this.
Health.
Health, yes, you do. All right, fair enough.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, I bring you greetings from the good people in the Zongo community. My name is Abdul Hanan. I work with Marapa Media Limited, just a stone throw from your official Nima residence. Mr. President, my question has to do with cyber security in areas like the Zongo community and the Zongo Development Fund itself. Mr. President, we all know what is happening regarding cybersecurity involving our young men in this country. And then the Zongo Development also came up. In the Zongo Development Fund, we understand that we are supposed to have community policing. But what we understand is that the Zongo Development Ministry has actually undertaken 51 projects in 41 Zongo communities in this country at a cost of some 15 million Ghana cedis.
1.5? Yeah,
1.5. Mm-hmm. 1.5. So, Mr. President, I'd like to hear from you what these projects are, because from what we know, currently is only the AstroTurf projects that are going around in some of the Zongo communities across the country. So I want to find out from you with regards to the community policing in the Zongo communities and the fact that we also have issues of cybercrime in the Zongo community and the country at large. Thank you.
Mr. President, my question has changed from energy to decentralization. We do know that when you were campaigning in 2016, you talked about the fact that district chief executives were going to be elected. Howbeit, the provision in the 1992 Constitution, which says in Article 243 that there shall be a district chief executive from every region who shall be appointed by the president. I want to know, I know some work has been going on with the issue about this election. I want to know where it is right now and what's the way forward with this issue about decentralization.
I think that's a final question.
Oh, Charles Bodu.
So step behind the microphone.
Oh, he's here.
Mr. President, good evening. My name is Donald from Daily Graphic. Sir, in your bid to establish a mission in Oslo, there has been some controversy. I want to find out if your government has committed any resources in purchasing any building. If yes, how much? And I also want to find out from you if you also agree to what the opposition is saying, that there should be an independent inquiry into what they claim might have happened. Thank you, sir.
My name is Charles Tetchibodi. I write for the Daily Guide newspaper. Mine is a simple one. Mr. President, we know some of your major policy initiatives have come under attacks from policy think tanks and the opposition political parties. Would you consider revising some of these policy initiatives, including the free SHS. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that those areas where I need help, I'll bring the ministers to answer, and then I'll do the ones that I can do myself. For instance, the Tema one, I completely lost that. So I'll get the ministers to come. As far as the number of projects in the Zongo community, the minister is also here. He'll come and give us an idea. But the cybersecurity, yes, I was astonished to hear. In fact, I think it was today, the statement that in the world, our ranking as far as cybercrime is concerned is so high that we're the 5th in the world for the commission of cyber crimes. That's a really serious matter. So I'll get the minister to come and deal with it. And the Oslo matter. Is the foreign minister here? She would not allow me to answer that question. So I'll get her to come and answer. But in a minute, madam, in a minute, yeah. So, Health, Minister, please. The outcome of the investigation into the fire at Tema. Mustafa.
Excellency, that is correct. The Central America source was meant down. There was a report that I encountered when I joined the ministry. National Security Report, Fire Service Report. The National Security Report was what actually said arson. But unfortunately for this nation, despite the fact that they have said arson, they still indicated that there should be a forensic audit. And technically, if you go to court, any good lawyer will tell you the investigation is not complete. The Auditor General has actually taken the report. He has gone ahead to procure a forensic auditor, paid for by DFID. The report last 2 weeks, he told me, had been sent to the Attorney General's office for review, and we are waiting for that outcome.
When did that happen? 2 weeks ago.
That is about 3 weeks now.
3 weeks.
From the Auditor General. He actually commissioned a forensic auditor, and the work had been done. So when I actually visited the site, I couldn't find out after 2015 how we could even do a very successful forensic audit. Because 3 days after the fire incident, they cleared all debris, everything away, and it is like the type of football park we were playing football when we were young, no grass. So there was no evidence actually there. So they actually tried to cover.
Well, anyway,
and
a report, some kind of inquiry report has been and is now with the Attorney General.
Yes.
So we'll hear from her in due course. Okay. All right. Mr. Minister, these projects of yours.
Yeah.
What are they? What are they about?
Yeah.
In the Zongo communities.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. The 15 million cedis that he's talking about. We have expanded that. That also includes payment to the 3,000 Arabic teachers that you recruited to help teach in our Islamic schools across Zongo communities in our country. It includes the green parks, the astroturfs that you are talking about. We're also rehabilitating a number of Islamic schools in our various Zongo communities. We've also sunk boreholes and wells and so on in Zongo communities that don't have water. There is a major drain in Asawasi, in Kumasi, which is a major Zongo community. They call it the Pelele stream. And it used to flood and so on. The Zongo, under the Zongo Development Fund, we drained the place, and now we've been able to get rid of the flooding and so on. Now, with regards to the cyber, Mr. President, what we have done...
Before that, the community policing.
We don't have any program to do community policing independent of what the police service has and what the YEA have. What we have done is to ask the YEA and the Ghana Police Service to increase security for us in our Zongo communities, because it's part of your vision under your Economic and Social Development Program 2017 to 2024, that you say that security in our Zongo communities is your prime concern. But ours is to liaise with the existing agencies that are responsible for that matter to help us to police the place.
Okay.
Now, with regard to the cyber crime in Zongo communities, we have signed an agreement with an NGO called Initiative for Youth Development, which is a NIMA-based Zongo young NGO, which is training for the start 200 of these young men in our Zongo communities in what we call the Zongo Coders program. And we are training them, Mr. President, to identify problems and challenges in our Zongo communities and to develop software application to resolve those challenges. The idea is to channel their energies from sitting behind the computer and engaging in what is popularly called Sakawa and so on, and redirect this energy towards productive courses and to engineer their mind to use that technology to resolve problems in our Zongo community. We intend to do 1,000 by the end of 2020, Mr. President.
Well done. Thank you, Minister. I think that that's a good response to your question. I see the Minister for Communications, I suspect, wants to add something on the whole cyber matter. So she's here.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to briefly reiterate the fact that we all need to be educated on safer cyber hygienic practices. And that's what the ministry does with the awareness creation programs that it holds. We do need to channel the energies of those who are tech savvy into more productive uses of those energies, and we can do that. And that's exactly what the Minister for Zongo Affairs is indicating that they're doing. But all of us need to know how to navigate the web and cyberspace in a more secure and safe manner. And the ministry will continue to incorporate sensitization, awareness creation into many of its projects. We're also building a cybersecurity center and a cyber academy. Hopefully this year or in the coming year, we'll be able, in collaboration with the Minister for Education, set one up at the Government Secretarial School, in addition to building the National Cybersecurity Center. So we're on course. And Ghana isn't doing too badly in the ranks of those who have prioritized cybersecurity as part of building their digital economies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam, Oslo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to assure the gentleman that we have not expended any money on Oslo, on the proposed property. Indeed, it is not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that will disburse the money. It's the Ministry for Finance, because the Société Générale loan, from which any purchases for properties will come from, is disbursed by the Ministry of Finance. And I can assure you that we have not even gone to PPA, because it is necessary as part of the laid down procedures for us to take the proposed or the potential property to PPA. Apart from that, we have our benchmarks that we follow, which also means that we would send engineers to the property to make sure that structurally the property is sound. Apart from that, we in the last purchase that we did, which is for Toronto, we started doing a value for money where KPMG visits the place and goes through all the documents that have been provided, authenticates them, and before they come with a report. So we are nowhere near where we will advise or request Ministry of Finance to disburse any money to the seller. Thank you. So we haven't done any such thing. Not yet.
The business of independent inquiries. If you will see, since we came, so many allegations are thrown against transactions, against personalities of this government. a lot of the time on the flimsiest of evidence. Here is an allegation being made, I believe, on the floor of Parliament. Minority spokesperson on Foreign Affairs, Parliament, about a transaction that has not even taken place. And yet, a serious accusation of misappropriation, mishandling of public funds is made on a transaction that has not taken place. Assuming for the sake of argument that the transaction had taken place, and then you were to make the allegation, oh, you paid so much, you've inflated. I can understand. But this is a transaction that has not taken place. How then do you begin to make statements about corruption, misappropriation? And then on the basis of this bare allegation, without more, I will then say, let us have an independent inquiry. My government will never recover. We will spend all our time at inquiries, because it clearly is the pattern of the opposition to throw these accusations in the air. When they're debunked, you don't hear anything about it, you just move to the next allegation. That's what we have seen. These allegations are made, they're found to be empty. There's not so much a word as, oh, okay, we're sorry about that. No, we just move on and fabricate the next one, and it'll go on. And it's going to get worse. 2019, a year to the election of these people who are so desperate, it's going to get worse. The fabrications will continue and continue. I think that for us, for a government, a president, to say he's going to acquiesce for an inquiry, you need to have some base that raises what the lawyers call some kind of prima facie case. Then in that case, I think the president is duty-bound to say, yes, let this matter be investigated. But when you have allegations that are so empty of substance, and then you say that merely because it has been raised, you therefore have to have an independent inquiry. I know that it will be in the interest of some people to make sure that we don't work, and we just get ourselves entangled in all of these red herrings and everything. So before you know it, 2020 is they say, these characters, they came and said this and this to you. They have not even been able to do this. I'm not going to buy that. And I'm not going to do that. We're going to stay focused. Somebody comes and brings a serious allegation that is worth investigating, I am the first to accept it. I've done it already in my government. I'll do it again, but not on things like this. The election of DCEs. A program has been put. We have a problem about taking the whole hog of party political contests into local government. I believe that is where now the vast majority of us want it to go. And we don't just want to have an election, but we want to have an election in which it is also on a party basis at the local level. There's an article of the Constitution, Article 55, which is an entrenched clause of the Constitution, which prohibits the sponsorship of elections to local government office on the basis of partisan or party political affiliation. So that has to be removed before we can have the elections that all of us are contemplating. And I felt that when you're looking at costs and convenience and everything, the local government elections that are coming this year, we will tag the referendum onto it. Already we're having a referendum this year in a week's time on these regions. Next year we're due to have district assembly elections. My own feeling is that, and this referendum is limited to the 6 regions, but the referendum over Article 55 is a national one, just as the elections for district assembly elections is a national one. That it will make more sense, it will be less costly to the taxpayer if the referendum to decide whether or not we want party politics in local government goes along with the district assembly elections. And then if the answer is yes, the clause is amended, and then from then onwards, we'll be able to have the district assembly, district chief executives being elected on a partisan basis. So that is very much on course. I believe the Minister of Local Government has actually publicly made the statement that I'm making now, that there will be a referendum. She has even begun the process in Parliament. The bill for the amendment of the Constitution is before the Parliament now. The first reading is.
Had the Council of State advice that it's not gazetted.
So the whole process has begun. The first reading in Parliament for the advice of the Council of State, and then the gazetting, and then it'll come back, I think, for a second reading. Is it? No, it'll then go to a referendum.
It'll go for the first reading and then to referendum.
There's the referendum before then we get it. So the process has begun. So I'm being very scrupulous about my commitments. There's some people, they don't want to realize it. They say I'm failing in all my commitments. But one by one, I'm fulfilling all of them. What about the attacks by the think tanks and the opposition on policies? Is that right? This is what we have all fought for a long time, an open society that allows everybody to express their views on government policy and develop alternative views, support, as the case may be. But one thing that is becoming clear to me is that it seems that every step that we want to take to modernize our society, to initiate the process of transformation, is met with resistance by our opponents. Digitization, paperless ports, national ID card, of course, free senior high school education. All of these steps that are being taken to take our country into the 21st century are being resisted by the opposition. I know some people have a vested interest in backwardness, in keeping people ignorant and backward, because they can then manipulate them easier. The Ghanaian people and myself were both in a hurry to get to the 21st century, and we're going to go and go and go and go until. So, as far as I'm concerned, these matters, these are policies that are the subject of attack, they're right. The think tanks and whatever, many of the think tanks too, many of the bombs they throw turn out to be very damp squads. At the end of the day, they have very little substance to them. They're right. I'll be the first to say that it is their right to open their mouth and say what they will. But they're not going to deter me. They're not going to deter this administration from continuing the path of bringing modern instruments of governance, attitudes towards governance, and bringing the economic initiatives that will take Ghana to be a full and active member of this 21st century. It is time that we made this collective effort to go forward. Our country, we have a history that really should condemn us, what has happened, some recent generations. This is the first country. The 19th century already, people were going to school in Ghana at a time when virtually the entire continent of Africa, there were no schools. We were the first to initiate the movements for freedom. The Southern and Eastern Africans are caught in the web of the sequestration of their lands by the colonial power. At the end of the 19th century, Saba, Case of the Hayford, and Say, and J.P. Brown, and all these people got together in Cape Coast, roused the people of Ghana to resist any attempt to take over our lands. They succeeded. That is the history from which we come. That in the 20s and 30s, nationalist movements were taking place in West Africa, all of them being inspired by events in our country. In 1947, when the United Caucus Convention was launched, it was the first nationalist movement that was launched in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. So this is our history. Then in 1957, the icing on the cake, Kwame Nkrumah raised the flag of our country. It's the first nation to get freedom. We have a huge history, and we have a responsibility to ourselves and to that history to move this country to the 21st century. That is, for me, the linchpin and the anchor of everything that I'm doing. Nothing is going to divert me from that path. We'll go ahead and we'll succeed. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President, we thank you for your time and for taking these questions. I want to invite the Honorable Deputy Minister for Information, Pius Senam Hajide, to say our proper thanks, and then we'll take a closing prayer and the national anthem and depart.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We are grateful to God Almighty for how far He has brought this country. Without a doubt, the good Lord has given us a leader and a leadership that is engaged in emancipating this country from the legacy burden and legacy servitude that was inherited and is leading us towards the promised land. Mr. President, the people of Ghana are grateful to you for keeping your commitment of keeping them in the governance process, running a transparent and open administration, and by allowing them to engage with you through the people of the media. And this is the second time within 1 year, apart from your several interactions across the various regions, that you have engaged with the people of Ghana through the media. The people are grateful, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, the Vice President, the Chief of Staff, the Senior Minister and Ministers, we are grateful to you for taking time of your very, very busy schedules to join us this evening as His Excellency once again demonstrates that he is a man of the people and he wants to govern and lead from the front, and that he is prepared to account to the people on all the marvelous things that are happening in this country. We are grateful to the Ghana Journalists Association, the leadership, President Afemoni and your group. We are grateful for your partnership. We are grateful to Giba and Primpag for your partnership and collaboration with the ministry and with the Communications Directorate to put this together. The invitations were coordinated by you. You helped us to design the ground rules that we applied here today. We are grateful to our stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we are very, very grateful to you. It is through you and with you that we carry this country along with us.
Well, quite a surprising end to that encounter, I must say. A lot of questions not asked, definitely. But there's just a lot more analysis we have to do here. Raymond Akwa is still with me in the studio. Raymond, we'll come back to talk about the format later and the fact that this ended quite surprisingly. We were expecting a lot more. Obviously, we didn't hear from our colleagues and other colleagues from...
Even the format now,
okay.
To be fair, I have always complained that it's more symbolic than a true engagement with all the issues. And I've suggested that if you want to do this properly, decentralize it. Just take a few in the greater Accra, there were the questions, then go to the other regions. Now, there were theming sections of our economy which were not dealt with. There are important issues that were not raised at all, completely in this particular case. They were, and if you so wish that you were not in the position to take up journalists of this magnitude, why invite them?
Exactly.
You make it look like you are doing something just to represent something out there and make it look like this is real engagement. But you cannot tell people, give them guidelines. You have one question per person. Then proceed to now take like 1/3 of the people gathered there. Let's not even 1/3, to be fair. The huge numbers. I was still struggling to see whether the real names in media and also the bigger names will be mentioned, whether the people that people expected to hear consistently would also come on board. I think this, to some extent, might continue. They should do it more than just twice in a year if they want to give real meaning to it. But just the select few, by whichever criteria determined by the ministry, to put up there. Some of the questions I agree leaves much to be desired, but this is what you get when you put the kind of people you call in there to come and ask some of these questions. So it's, frankly, to me, more symbolic than a real representation of an encounter that makes meaning.
Let's talk about the quality of some of the answers that we got. First, let's start with this one on on whether he would revise, if he has any plan to revise any of his major policies because of the feedback that have come from policy think tanks and the opposition. What's your assessment of the response of the president to that question?
To be fair, he's the president of the Republic of Ghana. And with the greatest of respect, it sounded like he was looking down on civil society in this country. The MPP has relied on civil society in times past. The party in power today still consults civil society in this case. There are very brilliant people in civil society who are better than some people in government today. Let's not wish them aside. We have very bright brains in civil society who are even in government today. So to make it look like some of the things you said, again, we can't say that everybody in civil society is also saying the right thing. The crux of this conversation is about free SHS. The alternatives that have been presented on the table is that it doesn't make sense to many people that you do blanket display of something that's costing you so much. You are struggling, as you have admitted, to actually fund this particular project, and yet the alternatives are there. And civil society have not said, scrap off your program. They have said, choose alternatives to this one, which may be equally important in saving your budget, in saving your economy, in making sure that you're on the right path. This is where he has a problem with. We agree that the president is keen and bent on still implementing the policy, but the president cannot use this as a basis to make civil society looks like, I mean, this is a bunch of people who don't know their left from right. As I said, I know people with competence in government. They are equally very competent people in civil society. Some of them with way higher, way better, way proper appreciation of virtually every sector of the economy, more than the people who are in government today.
Raymond, is interesting. The last encounter the president had with the media was assessed by the Media Foundation for West Africa. And they did mention some recommendations. They wanted to see better, well-researched questions. They wanted more background, more context. They wanted follow-up questions to be asked by colleague journalists if a question posed to the president was not answered properly. Another thing with the president's previous encounter was he appeared in a hurry. He wanted to rush off. And that's what we saw today, because he actually cut the information minister and said, look, I want to leave by 7.
Yes, but to be fair, the time the president spent engaging and shaking hands could have been spent answering questions. I'm sure the people are more interested in hearing the answers rather than seeing him, who's not in a hurry, as you can see on the screen, engaging the people, rather than answering the questions down on the minds of the representatives and the people they actually have given questions to put there. I heard virtually on every network asking, which question would you ask to ask the president? So we want to believe that this is a reflection, the questions they're going to ask, a reflection of what the people are demanding of the executive leadership. I would have preferred that the camaraderie is rather extended in giving, because for the last 10 to so minutes, the president has been engaging them. He's been engaging them, not answering questions, but rather exchanging pleasantries with them. I would have preferred this was rather time spent in answering some questions. At least 3 or 4 would have been done within this space.
And we must mention that this did not really start on time. The advertised time was 5 p.m. and this started at about 5:30 p.m. So clearly, even if it was supposed to end at 7, Raymond, that's about 30 minutes lost.
Yeah, benefit of doubt would have gone to the people who came at only 5 o'clock with the expectation that the president would have been there at that particular time. I agree perfectly. But you see, it's part of how our governance is shadowed. We make it look like it's a privilege to engage the people who are voted into power. We make it look like it's some extraordinary thing that you have to do. So they determine the time, they determine the space, they determine how it's supposed to go to. It turns democracy on its head. Democracy rather insists that the elected serve at the whims and caprice of the electorate in this case. But we, for a very long time, have been operating the opposite scheme in this country.
Raymond, quickly, let's just wrap up. Let me find out from you. Like you mentioned, we've sampled a lot of questions from our audience. Is there 1 or 2 major questions you thought were not asked or even touched at all by President Akufo-Addo in his speech before the questions came?
No, I think the crux of the education policy is not whether or not there's complaining. It's whether or not he's going to consider the views on it. The president completely ignored that part and rather moved into talking about how civil society is operating and how other people in opposition are operating. He completely avoided that particular answer, because there's been complaints from outside and within about how our budget is being constrained with this particular practice. But again, he, during his speech, talked about how private people are getting money into their pocket, how the ordinary woman is also getting money into their pocket because their kids are going to school and they are not paying school fees. Yes, I believe that those ones were dealt with. On the economy proper, He said more during his speech than what was in response to questions. And there are theming questions on this country's economy going forward post-IMF that we all be interested in, which barely got some chance of answers from the people who were supposed to answer it on the ground there.
Raymond, I must say quite a disappointment that all the questions we were hoping to hear were not asked, but well, what can you do? It has ended. Would you call it the worst media encounter so far?
Well, I would not. I mostly don't want to use words like words and categorize as saying, but it is not satisfactory. I do not believe that these encounters seek to achieve its main aim of answering most of the questions, but they are more symbolic than anything of real meaning anyway. Thank you, Raymond Akwa there. I'm Benis Abubeidulansa, and we've been bringing you the President's media encounter from the Jubilee House. JoyNews Prime continues shortly. Definitely, there will be a lot more analysis of that particular encounter with President Akufo-Addo. Stay with JoyNews, your most credible news source. Thanks for your company.